recognize that, hey, what just went on there, that just wasn't cool. So I went on to learn about things like microaggression, and wow, it's just amazing how much thought goes into what one human being will do to another. And what I resemble, if you go back into my life 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, if you dig into the skeletons in my closet, ooh, I know Halloween's over, but you can get a little scared thinking like, that's that Kurt Roscoff that does the Compassionate Citizens podcast. Boy, what a hypocrite, right? So it is for sure that our collaborators, including now Dr. Bliven, has told me in the past year that there is a regular nomenclature for this. It's called, hey, look at it, that what I refer back to in my past is Kurt Roscoff 1.0. And then now, as I co-host this show with our amazing Emily Gomer, I'm at Kurt Roscoff 2.0. And not that I've arrived and all is cool and so forth. I do this Compassionate Citizens podcast as a growing experience for me, a learning experience for me. Because what started 8 years ago is that old aspect of the more you know, the more you realize what you don't know. And that's what I look forward to here in these Compassionate Citizens podcasts, is be able to feature compassionate citizens around the world, and that I can keep learning. And as I'm learning, everybody out there can learn. Let's do unified events where we're all working together for that better future, being the change we want to see in the world, and have it unfold moment by moment, and rejoicing each moment, living in the present. Edwin Edeberry and Helen Kayoma with the Happy Neighborhood Project, they repetitively tell us, don't let your past or your future rob you of the present. So it's something where growing up, I heard a lot of the cliche or the phrase of carpe diem, seize the day. There's a lot to that. And you never know the power of a moment. You never know what the other party is maybe hiding at the time, because you haven't built that relationship. You haven't created that trust. You haven't created that liking yet to say, like, I'm going to bother sharing my garbage with you. And this is something that Story told at the Happy Neighborhood Project. If we go again to YouTube lives, or YouTube videos anyway, on youtube.com, and we search for happiness as a default position, there we have Edwin Edeberry, our Chief Happiness Officer at the Happy Neighborhood Project, telling a story about how he interviewed 1,000 people on the subject of happiness. And he highlighted one of the individuals. And the end point of that is the person thanked Edwin for his compassion. I'm going to say it, that's not the way it was said in the story, but I'm going to say it that way because it's one way to give it a twist as we're here at the Compassionate Citizens podcast. And the bottom line is the guy needed to thank Edwin because Edwin essentially saved his life, because visits to the psychologist weren't working, and he just really wasn't seeing his way out of the dark place. And so the typically shorter conversation that Edwin would have with these 1,000 people, this one individual had the longest conversation and kept hanging in there and talked extensively with Edwin to the point of being the only one of these 1,000 people interviewed to get Edwin's name. And he had that ulterior motive. He wanted Edwin's name because he was not going to leave without a way to come back to thank Edwin for what he did, to get him to shake from that suicide ideation. And so that's the kind of stuff that we open up and we unfold here. We unpack this, the human condition and how we impact each other, and the great skill development, the skill sharing, like what Edwin does with happiness as a skill. Every Sunday morning with Pacific time, 10 a.m. Pacific time on Clubhouse, our happy neighbors get together in Clubhouse and we have open conversation about happiness as a skill. And Edwin gives us a focal point to share kind of how we navigate this and, to empower us to maintain our happiness, to have that happiness as a default position. And then it's not much of the point of the conversation. That the whole conversation is personal development, personal sharing. But the inclination I have in the people business is I extend it in more of a sociological standpoint to see how we can help this be instrumented on a societal level in society and our culture and our customs, and make it the thing that we lead with compassion. So Emily, what are your thoughts there? Is you're multitasking, taking notes and being a student of your own life and just being the all-time, get or did person? What are your thoughts? Why don't we reminisce a little bit about what imbibes you with the Compassionate Citizens podcast? And have you experienced any compassion today prior to this podcast?
Well, first of all, Edwin is amazing. So for anybody who doesn't know Edwin, should tune into his stuff on Clubhouse and on Zoom and that kind of thing. Get to know Edwin. He's very happy. I'm not saying that. But yeah, I agree with you. I think I think our conversation earlier was having something to do with compassion. And then with giving somebody the link to this podcast. And yeah.
All right. Thanks, Emily. Yeah, I agree. And so at the Happy Neighborhood Project, we meet a lot of people who are in the direct selling industry and the home business industry. I've been sharing in my networking today that this week, the week of November 9th through the 12th, I'm just going to say it that way because of producing it now on November 9th. And my wife Sue's birthday, November 12th, that it's Sue Roscoff week. And so the slogan, the tagline that she has for her Tupperware business is do what makes you happy. And so there are these things that we can do to come forth when we open up a distributorship and we distribute products, like say Tupperware as an example. We can decide how we're going to do that because there's a wide array of opinions about the sales process. For me personally, I love sales. I grew up the son of a salesman. My father was a consummate salesperson, and he prided himself in how he conducted sales that I knew as his son he was doing selling, but he gave an experience where I don't know if many people would actually describe it as that Red Roscoff sold them, whether it was a lawnmower or whether it was other lawn care supplies or equipment or, Purina dog food or, whatever it was, all these things that my dad sold, running a golf course for 13 years and selling the opportunity to golf at Camelot. And so there is something to this that at the Happy Neighborhood Project, we do a lot of master classes. And so there's classes on social media and with the people business, the
like
art of the sale. Financial? Yeah.
Financial, and there's really like a wide range of different topics.
So it sounds like you've been at a master class, Emily.
I've been at a few.
Right. There you go.
just a few.
All right. Yeah, I call that Happy University. It's not branded that way. That's not what it's recognized at, but that's the way my mind works. I think of it as Happy University. Um, so, and you find the Happy University at, at the place where the zip code is HAPPY, folks. Imagine that. Finding yourself at zip code HAPPY. So in the art of selling, we can say that a lot of people that start into the sales process, they do what a sales training group taught me that they call is jumping in the middle, because people have the product, like say a Tupperware bowl to sell, and they say, hey, look at this great bowl, look at all this, almost like going on to the Home Shopping Network or something, and you're like seeing this thing in action, or having all that happen. And so really for the direct selling industry, for these entrepreneurs, the idea is maybe there's a way to reconsider how well that's working out for you. Because for sure, some people can get away with that, share the product, share the features and the benefits, get a person to a buying decision, and either they're going to buy it or not, and do that. And some people are satisfied with the results. But in my experience of the last 20 years, I've had people change my way of going about a home business, whether it's the MLM industry, whether it's network marketing or recruiting or whatever it is, to say that there's a whole other part of this. And Tom Hopkins training that I've gone through has been really good to teach this, that there is a process called lower the sales resistance. And I bring that up here at the Compassionate Citizens podcast because we as humans, we have this capacity of empathy. And so that really essentially is what sales trainers are trying to do. They're trying to turn on that empathetic drive of somebody who is given the privilege of distributing a financial product, like Emily brings up, or whether it's a Tupperware bowl or whatever product they have to sell, and to try to have them temper their passion and their temptation to just push it out into the marketplace and push and push. Now, not to say that there isn't a place for that, but if you really want to develop relationship sales, the idea is we can look to questions. And in the world of sales, I learned from what I know is out of California, a private business called Integral Assessments. But there's a company out of Texas, which helps human resource departments with profile assessments. Profiles International. And it allows human resource professionals to use the tool of an assessment to go ahead and to draw in through questions, through a survey and analysis, so that they understand who they're working with, and to help that, whether it's a prospective candidate for hire or whether it's somebody on the team and you're doing team development. Let's understand who we're trying to serve, and we're trying to train, and we're trying to consider to see if it's a square peg in a round hole, or if we have a match, round peg, round hole, goodness of fit. So the idea is, it's the magic of it happens through questions. And so in the realm of sales, there's a practice of sales called the Socratic selling process, or the Socratic sales process. And so people are like, as soon as I bring up a term, people get lost. Like, oh, now it's getting technical. Now I got this thing of Socratic sales, but the idea is, if I say, are you familiar with Socrates? Like if I say the name Socrates, you got an idea what's going on? Yeah. You're talking Socrates. Okay. So I got people when I say that. And I say, okay, well, now just accept the fact that Socrates influenced psychology and the practice of psychology, with the stereotype that when you go to a psychologist, if you think of your movies and your TV shows or any experience you have with psychologists, you get this imagery. The stereotype is that you're picturing a sofa, or that you're going to lay down on a couch, and you're going to have your head down, you'll be comfortable, and then you're going to have, kind of, at the pillow at your head, you're right kitty corner from there, you picture that you have the psychologist there with the notepad, right? And the psychologist is just asking you question after question after question. How does it make you feel? What do you think about that you're thinking of a family member right now? Did you have an issue? And just diving deeper and deeper and deeper, so that the psychologist can get the landscape of what's going on in that space between your ears, and then to use the study and science of psychology to eventually get to where, if some practices might say there's something clinical going on, that we can consider medication and stuff like that. But how do they get to that? They get to that by having that whole assessment process taking place. And so that's where I translate that to say, okay, what you have as stereotype for a psychologist, what about thinking that way and thinking of it as the psychology around your product? And to ask, in the sales camp I'm talking about with residual income training, RI training, it would be that we'd ask high yielding questions. And you get the half a dozen high yielding questions that when you look at how people are buying your product, and you look at all the customers you have, and you look at before they became a customer, before they knew about your product, to that they're a happy customer, there probably are, across all your customers, there probably are a half a dozen questions that you could answer, that they don't even have to answer for you, because you're satisfying them as a customer. And there's 6 questions that for other people that aren't your customers, you don't know, you wouldn't want to claim that, but these become the questions that you then can ask people that you're building a relationship with. Because once you get those 6 answers, if you believe your product serves a purpose, you can then follow up when you kind of feel that their answers are convincing you, you have something that might help them with that. You say that. You say, I think I have something that might help you with that. And then the listening occurs. You lean forward and you just wait. You leave that pregnant pause. What are they going to do with your offer? What does the other person do when you say the words, I think I have something that could help you with that? And if they're not responding, if the psychology isn't there, if they're not drawn to say, Emily, what is it? How do you think you can help me? Well, what are you talking about? If they're not coming back to show that they're interested, it's not the right time, because the process is attention, interest, desire, decision, action. And if you're not really sticking with that interest part of the process, you're going to go for the decision and you're going to try to drive them to an action that you're putting the cart before the horse. Everything is right person, right place, right time. And so in this way, if we have something to sell, we can separate ourselves from the aggressive, assertive salespeople, and we can just passively sit back and we can just build nice, long-standing relationships, like what we do at the Happy Neighborhood Project. At the Happy Neighborhood Project, we say the best friends that you ever could want to meet can be right here at the Happy Neighborhood Project. And so that's what it's all about, building lifelong friendships, whether in the professional business realm or not. And in terms of coming through your brand or through your company, you can say the important thing here is if you're planning on being with the company for a while, you don't want to 5 years down the line be like, oh, that guy, that Kurt guy, I didn't enjoy what he was talking to me about or how he treated me 5 years ago. So you want to plant those seeds of greatness that every step of the way, you're just building enjoyable experiences that set you apart from the crowd, and that might get people thinking like, really? Did that just happen? I was with a compassionate salesperson. That was interesting. or that consultant, or all these names that we give, advisor, and we have all these names because nobody likes sales. I shouldn't say nobody, but I would say the vast majority of consumers don't like salespeople, because the idea is people don't like to be sold, they like to buy. So the idea is, if we can get that empathetic drive going, if we can get the listening going, and we can hear and understand how they think, how they consider a product. When they look at that Tupperware bowl, is it kind of like, I don't do much cooking, I don't spend much time in the kitchen, I'm not really the one that's going to buy. You need to speak to my spouse. Or I go out to eat all the time, I don't need that Tupperware. I go out to eat and I don't do leftovers, I just throw food away. What are you going to do if people aren't interested to save food in your Tupperware container, such like this. So this is a little something I wanted to bring out today in this episode of the Compassionate Citizens podcast, because I give a lot of credit to the Happy Neighborhood Project for the success we're having here at the World of Ability Podcast Network, and the great kudos and the reviews that I get from past guests that have been on these podcasts and have enjoyed their time immensely. Emily's been doing this podcasting stuff with us for about a year, right, Emily?
Yeah, I think it's getting close to being a year, yeah.
So has it totally?
If it hasn't been a year already, it's been close to a year.
So has it totally sucked, Emily? Has it been like the worst experience you've ever had, or what?
Right, yeah. No, just kidding. No, it's been good. It's been great. It hasn't totally sucks. Or whatever word you want to use.
Yeah. So one of the questions that network marketers like to use a lot, the cliche of a question would be, what do you like best about the podcasting here at World of Ability Podcast Network, Emily? What do you like best about it all?
Just in general, or with this particular podcast?
Well, what just comes to mind when I say, what do you like best? I mean, is it hanging out with me? Is it Marcus Hart? Is it that you get a butterfly on your screen? That you get to be a part of it? I mean, what do you like best?
Well, actually, kind of all of that. Along with being able to, well, not necessarily me specifically, but putting out the like a good message, like the compassion citizen message, like right now, kind of getting like information out to everybody that hopefully will help at least one person. So we can help at least one person, that will, it's better than zero.
There you go. Just listen to that, folks. We're talking to Emily Gomer, the podcast engineer and co-host here at the Compassionate Citizens podcast, reporting to us that with a year's worth of effort, just imagine this, 5 hours a week minimum. Each show is an hour, and we got 5 shows. So 5 hours a week minimum. It's probably more like 10 hours a week by the time you do all the social media and getting everything to Marcus and getting everything to Jay and everything she's got to do. It's probably 10 hours a week that Emily commits to this. And she's satisfied that if in 1 year of time, 250 hours of her life into this, if it goes to help one person, our compassionate citizen, Emily Gomer, is saying it's all worth it. Did I sum that up accurately, Emily?
Mm-hmm.
All right, there we go. So that's how we do it here. We just get right down to the foundation and the building blocks. So I'm a firm believer, if you don't put this stuff out there transparently, and if we always do the key elements behind the scenes and hidden, and the commonplace person does not get to see how the things that they see in business, the marketplace, and just seeing finished products, like with event planning. Our culture of event planning is, let's wait. We don't want to share anything until everything is like all neat and polished. Well, how are you ever going to teach people how to create great events, if all they know is that when they're guests, it's like, wow, these are great events. I love this vendor fair. I love this. I love that. But we're not teaching people how to do these events. And that's why I love the Happy Neighborhood Project. At HMP, there's a co-host program that when you raise your hand and you say, I'm considering to be a co-host, I'll be a co-host for this or that Zoom meeting. And then if you get accepted, if you get designated to be that co-host, you get a co-host manual and all the tools you need to be an awesome co-host. So would you agree with that, Emily, with your experience being the HMP Wisconsin, Minnesota co-host, one of 4 co-hosts? Have you felt that HMP has guided you and given you every detail that you've needed? It's been so easy to come in and be their co-host for them and for all the guests.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. We're growing this co-host community, hundreds of people around the world, serving thousands, to say, let's keep spreading happiness around the world, one neighborhood at a time. And let's make it a thing. Let's build up that happy, that national happy quotient, that measurement. There's a measurement out there to kind of keep that discussion going and keep this practice of what can be done in a country to elevate the happiness of its citizens, and nations out there that are the raving reviews for how wonderful it is for life within the country, where the nation's leadership focuses on what are we doing to be a part of building happiness across our citizens. And
if it wasn't for the Happy Neighborhood Project, I wouldn't have, or most likely wouldn't have, so I wouldn't have probably met everybody that I have met through the Happy Neighborhood Project, like in any other way. So like I've grown if that makes sense, I've grown the number of people that I know. I like around the country and internationally too.
Yeah, let's look at what's going on right now.
I think you can agree. I think you can agree with me, Kurt, since your number has gone up too.
Oh yeah, my numbers have gone up a couple thousand people, folks. It's just even just like saying that right now, I'm like, I had to think, is it 1,000 or 2,000? Oh yeah, it is 2,000. I have to pinch myself. 2,000 people that have flooded into my life because one man thought in 2009 that with the recession, that it's unfortunate the way that whole economic situation leaves negativity in the marketplace. And he set out to do something.
Yeah, and he started talking about happiness. And a few years later, here we go.
Right. And because he interviewed 1,000 people, which gave birth to the I Am Happy Project, and it emerged an app, the I Am Happy app, and they've got buttons and all sorts of stuff that emerged through the I Am Happy Project, the tribe of thousands around the world for the I Am Happy Project. And then with that personal development system, saw the opportunity to bring it back to the business sector, because that's what inspired it, was that corporate experience, that lack of consumer confidence that triggered the whole thing of the mental health aspect of what it would be to get happiness in the lives of every person, just on a household personal level, and the roles that people play in life, that they can show up to what they do happier. And that then they spun that over to the business community, saying, we're going to build happiness around the world, one neighborhood at a time. This is going to be our project. And the Kickstarter to it all is from the business community. And Edwin sought out the ideas from Walt Disney, and with Disney World and Disneyland, the whole Disney enterprise, that the parks are the happiest place on earth for kids and for families. And so
But then it's gotten into the nonprofit world too, with the fireside chat.
yeah, so yeah, folks, Emily and I have attended the fireside chat by Chief Happiness Officer Edwin Edeberry that follows the worldwide main event on Fridays, which again, this Friday is my wife Sue's birthday. So come on into the main event as we turn the main event that's excellent on its own merits. And we had a little birthday bash to it and just turn it up a notch this week with it being Sue Roscoff week. But following that meeting is the fireside chat where we kind of take off our, income generating activities hat and we put on our, okay, now what do we do to give back? What are we doing in the philanthropic, charitable space, volunteer space with our nonprofits, like Emily is saying? And we go to this week in and week out. It got to the point where Emily thought at a team meeting a couple months ago, where it was like, hey, what about if we take that networking, like what we make available at an HMP meeting, and have in that networking format that we can, have this do what we needed to do. And I say we because of the description of Onward and Upward as a nonprofit. And that's what she does anyway. Emily proposes to everybody around the world in Happy Neighborhood Project fashion that she is there as the executive assistant at Onward and Upward, and she's promoting a nonprofit. So she thought, what about if we had a devoted event that was really that meeting that is set aside to say, come one, come all, let's get all the nonprofits there and let's get the for-profit nonprofits networking together, and let's create some robust marketplaces from the nonprofit side of the perspective. So we as a team thought that was a perfect idea, that it was an idea of merit to bring to Edwin. And so we worked on that as a team, and Dr. Bliven, with her as the founder of Onward and Upward, she got the paperwork all going. She got the, Word document going on the computer and typed it all out, gave it to Edwin. We had a quick follow-up phone call with Edwin, and away it goes. All of a sudden he's like, yeah, he's looking for founders of nonprofits, board members of nonprofits, people who write grants for nonprofits, and that all these people, for applying to be a co-host, you'd want to hear that they're volunteering in their nonprofit. So whether executive directors or what have you, those key positions in nonprofits. And so we have a tremendous co-host team for HMP nonprofit that meets every Thursday. And so, yeah, I agree. Oh, yeah. I said every Thursday. It's every Wednesday. That's HMP Ability.
It's Wednesday. No?
I'm sorry, what were you saying, Emily? I missed it.
I was just saying about the correction of
the schedule. That I misspoke on the schedule. Yeah. That HMP Ability thing was back in May. I approached Edwin that with being from the Disability Channel, I was asking what his appetite was to have a devoted meeting that would really get that paradigm going on inclusion, accessibility, accommodation, all things, considering our largest minority group, 1 in 4 people identifying with a disability. And so 25% of the marketplace. It just struck me in the last 10, 15 years, how I really missed the mark in business, which I think 3 out of 4 business people do miss the mark. That when we're totally in that cancel culture and we cancel the idea of people with disabilities be a concern for our business, I think we're missing it. That means that we're just moving our business forward through 75% of the pie. 3/4 of the potential is what we're working with. when we don't have it ideal for people with disabilities. And so why not go with 100%? And that's what I decided as a business person. I want to move forward with 100% of population welcome to the gates of anything I attach to. And so Edwin, I think, did us a huge honor opening up the gateways for a co-host team for H&P Ability, and to show that it's yet another way that H&P is driving forward, in my opinion, as the most inclusive business community on planet Earth. So what amazing, compassionate leadership by Edwin Edeberry, who's been on this show a couple of times, by the way. So when we go into the archive, go into the history, I'm so grateful that Edwin has been on the show, and to hear the words that he shared, just celebrating with us that we have such a podcast to talk about this topic and to have this all available for our friends through the Happy Neighborhood Project. So again, I want to make sure we touch on the origin of this show, giving great credit to Norland Dimmitt out of Chicagoland area. He taught us about the Compassionate Citizens Project. And so we have a Facebook page with what we're doing here in media to tie us to being a stakeholder, with the Compassionate Citizens Project, and then to show that as our contribution to this great project idea to do these podcasts and to really get the narrative going. And so the whole idea is the faith community recognized our politics from the few years previous, and trying to get compassion into our politics for sure. But then I just took that as a starting point to say there's so many things like in sports with sportsmanship and stuff like that. So again, just wanted to give that mention again because of our friend Norland Dimmitt that makes it all possible out of Chicago. And he's got a whole real estate model that is built into this, compassionate realty. And so just really forward thinking models at play here. And I also like the mutual aid network, going to mutualaidnetwork.org. There's a tremendous economic model for distributors. I was talking to a home business yesterday who was interested to see what I would do with their product. And I showed them the 8 points of economic balance that I work with in any business undertaking I take today. So the mutual aid network I learned about through time banking. So if you haven't heard of time banking, wanted to make sure to give that mention. Timebanks.org is a reference there. So I want to do a little check-in here, Shirley. Are you, as we're closing out here, thinking to finish up listening, or did we have anything bubble up for you that you want to share, or do you want to save any sharing for next time? What are you thinking?
I can save my sharing for next time, but I definitely am looking into a lot of the different information that you are providing and looking to get more involved, especially getting more involved. It's fascinating.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you here as our, in Zoom main room, live listening audience here. This is great. Just like the old television days when they talk about their live in studio audience. So here you are. So definitely welcome you back to any of these shows that we do, and then any of the other 4. And always open to open up the gateway to new shows. So if we ever inspire the idea of you doing your own show, just let us know. We can talk about that after showtime here. I can point out to everybody that I am available to do follow-ups from these episodes. Feel free to call and text me at 262-372-1SKI. That's 262-372-1754. Send me an email anytime. Kurt, K-U-R-T, at thedisabilitychannel.us, and catch our podcasting. Check it out at transformubroadcast.com. That's singular, no S at the end, transformyoubroadcast.com. And then with podcasting, there is an S at the end, transformyoupodcasts.com. And with the Transform You, let's remember the brand is always you as the letter U. Transformu.us is the homepage for this whole enterprise. And we do also have transformyoubroadcast.com/WOA for World of Ability, WOA for World of Ability, transformyoubroadcast.com/WOA to see more of our background here at the World of Ability. And definitely check out the Compassionate Citizens Project Facebook page that's tied to this podcasting. And then with the group that is there, it's a Compassionate Citizens group where we can all share and have that interaction and open up that discussion in a Facebook group fashion. And we also are present on LinkedIn, and we do also have YouTube. So we're using all the social media, and with Transform You Media Network, we're out there on the long list of all of the live streaming video and live streaming audio only platforms like Spreaker and so forth. So we definitely are getting out there around the world and sharing what we've got here and helping people to hop on board. Transform You celebrating hundreds of thousands of people being a part of this network. So thanks for being a part of the tribe and imbibing this around the world. And we're happy to have our newly established radio station with the Transform You Radio out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So we are going to be having a future of opening up radio and TV stations around the world as a part of all this enterprising. And I'm serious about it as an advocate. It's all about reaching people at a household basis. And what a better way to do it than with media, whether it's print media and so forth. So if any of you are out there in this wheelhouse, definitely feel free to reach out to me and let's talk some shop and let's make it happen. So Emily, what's happening with you there as we're in our closing minutes? Help us shape the conclusion of this fine show that we've had today. It's been great co-hosting with you.
Yeah, that's the same with you. But thank you for everybody who has tuned in today. And thank you for Shirley for joining us. And for all of the activity on our social media pages. And hopefully that everybody joins us again next week.
There you go.
Same place.
All right. So Emily, I'm going to sneak in here a quick little story. And it's going to be a quick one about a meeting that I was at last night. And I think you know about the meeting I attended, Emily. It's the Optimist Club of Sussex, Lisbon, Lannon, Butler out of Wisconsin. And so I'm at the high school IMC, the Instructional Material Center, the library. And so we're there as Optimist members, and we're at the end of the agenda where the president calls for any other ideas for the good and welfare of the Optimist Club. And I raised my hand and I asked the president if I could give a little background on our community summit. And it's something that I sent an email on a week and a half ago to allow the board to talk about it at the board meeting that they had last week. And they did go ahead and do that. But the amazing thing about this community summit, it's in a format that I call collective impact, I shouldn't say I call it that. I use the term that's out there called collective impact, which means in this case, this is the example, the one example I can give. It can take any permutation, any combination of this. But the idea is to get that public-private partnership working on community issues. And so in this case, it's a pretty thorough alliance because they're bringing to the table at the high school, the room in the high school. So it's from the school district perspective, school district administration, together with municipal administration from the city and villages and township, and from the faith community. So leaders from the faith community, I'm there from the volunteer community standpoint, and then the Chamber of Commerce there, and the hospital, and all this stuff, is all there around the table. Probably a list of 30 people in the community that kind of are invited to come to this community summit to have discussion about ripe issues for our community. And it was interesting. One of the members of the summit spoke up and said, we're experiencing negativity. So when you really get down to it, so, okay, say from the municipality standpoint, challenging the village hall or town hall or, whatever, on different things as a citizen. And then with all our social media, people can get on the keyboard or get on their smartphone devices and they vent, and it invokes this ripple. And it's kind of like negative attracts negativity attracts negativity. And it's kind of interesting. And then we talk about it and it's like, well, people aren't checking their sources. So you have people around the community hopping on the bandwagon to, clobber, notable figures in the community and to bring them down, because of misinformation and just not having that healthy exchange. So that's kind of what is happening in our communities. We're having this dialogue in leadership. How can we functionally facilitate a healthy conversation that when people are having a negative experience, how can we be custodians of making a shift and addressing that negative experience to convert people from the negative experience to hopefully we can bring it to satisfaction and get our citizens to that, might say, a happy place, just saying it that way because we've been talking about the Happy Neighborhood Project. So I just wanted to share that really quickly because I like to share about community organizing and leadership and facilitating these things.
So what happened at the end of the meeting when you raised your hand?
Well, with the Optimist meeting, it just was a conversation starter. I didn't bring it up to unfold. Okay. We had responses that people feel that citizens need to be involved in addressing, and that's completely the point, whether we end up with town halls or whatever. So the community summit was just a few weeks ago. So we haven't been a few weeks of what these groups are going to do with this yet. So this is all ripe, tentative, preliminary information that, basically might say the pillars of our society here are thinking of how we're going to kind of get around this element that we're currently experiencing, that it's more negativity than we're used to. So it's interesting that I'm kind of an ambassador of the Happy Neighborhood Project. I'm going to take a look at how the Happy Neighborhood Project can help my neighborhood. So it's interesting to have that. So with that, I'll leave that as the final thought. And again, like Emily says, we hope to see you next week. And thanks for being with us for sure in this show. And hopefully you've been watching us in the past and we have you captivated forever into the future. Until next time, I'm yours, Kurt Roskoff, with the World of Ability for this show, the Compassionate Citizens Podcast.